Hey, what's up guys? My name is Daniel and I'm here with my homeboy today. We'll call him Liam for lack of an actual name. And basically we're bringing it to you live today. And not live, I just keep doing that. I'm not sure. Hey, what's up guys? This is Daniel coming to you live. Coming to you live! Hey guys, what's up? This is Daniel. This is my channel in Stitches. Go back and watch my long tail cast on video if you haven't. Get out of here. Or if you know how to cast on already, you're in the right place. This is a perfect time to be learning how to knit. For fellas out there, jump in, man. Lose your preconceived notions. I mean, to be honest with you, have I met thousands of ladies doing this? Come on, man, of course I have. Are they between the ages of 60 and 90? Most definitely, most definitely. Happily married? Most of them. Many lesbians after that point? You better believe it. That this is all about fun. Guarantee you'll enjoy it. Guys. All right, guys, welcome. If you're coming from the previous long tail cast on video, go check it out if you don't know how to cast on. Otherwise, let's get started. So I got my 2 needles. This first stitch, I'm gonna loosen up a little bit. I will say that if you are coming from another video, I tie up my short tail, my now short tail, just so it doesn't get in our way and so I can differentiate between it and our working yarn. Working yarn is attached to the skein or the ball. Take my right needle. I'm gonna loosen that stitch a little bit just so it's easy to see what I'm doing. I'm gonna take the tip of this needle. I'm gonna pass it under the left-hand needle so it comes out the back side. It's now through this loop. I'm gonna hold on to both needles with my thumb. I'm gonna take my working yarn, bring it towards my chest a little, and then up in between these 2 needles into the back. And then I'll hold on to it back there with my pointer finger. And now, since I have it held on to, I'm gonna draw back this needle. I'm gonna trace it on the underbelly of this other needle just to keep contact and another precaution. And there she is. Aww. Enough of that. The last step of this first stitch is I'm gonna knock this guy off the other needle. Don't worry. Feels uncomfortable, I know. Then we can tighten this stitch over here by pulling the working yarn just a tiny bit. We'll get into that later, why that is. And we're going right back in. So this needle goes up and under there. Hold on to both. Yarn towards me, yarn over top. Now you guys can go back, and then I'm holding on to this wool back here, and I'm pulling it through, 1. Sliding this one off that needle, 2. Pull a little tight now. Take our working yarn, pull a little tight. And we're gonna do a 3rd, and I'm gonna speed it up a little bit. And I'll meet you at the end of the row. Sound good? Sweet. Done with row 1. We knit row 1. B's and G's. Boom. Boom bada. Now if you're wondering why I'm knitting with these, which are called double point needles or DPNs, it's none of your business. We'll talk about it some other time. I don't want to talk about it right now. Now there's a good reason for why you don't pull tight on the first or the second stitch. And I don't want to get too deep into it, but to have a nice uniform edge, and we like to have a nice uniform edge, uniform anything in knitting, your stitches are next to each other, except for the last stitch. This stitch is connected with this one next to him, but also the next stitch above, right? To beat a dead horse, do not pull tight on your first stitch or 2 of every row, and you will be rewarded with clean line. Go get them. So we've done a couple 2-3 rows of knit stitch, right? So now what we're looking at, we've done a bunch of rows of knitting, and I hope you have too.
And so we can look at it and kind of see what's going on. Now, an easy way to count how many rows you have here is just the ridges, right? Every ridge counts as 2 rows. So we've got 2, 4, 6, I've done 8 rows. Nice clean edge, voila. And you're not gonna have that at first, but you have the tools now to do that when you're ready to do it. We're gonna go on to the purl stitch now. We learned how to knit. And now the purl stitch is interesting. Technically speaking, a purl stitch is just a backwards knit stitch. That probably doesn't mean a lot to you now, but again, maybe just food for thought. So we're gonna start off, and now with the knit stitch, we have our work in back, right? And we're taking our needle and we're going from the front to the back. Now, as I mentioned with the purl stitch, it's somewhat the reverse. We're gonna bring our working yarn up front. We're gonna bring our working yarn up front. We're gonna bring our working yarn up front. And now with my needle, I am pulling, I'm going from the back of the work to the front. So, back to the front. I can hold on to these stitches again if I like. I can just poke it forward. And now the wrap is a little different, obviously. We're gonna go up above and then around back of that needle. I'm gonna hold on to it a little bit. And so this dip back is gonna be a little different, right? Because I have to keep that yarn on the needle. So again, it's always good to, we'll hold that tight a little bit right there. And then I'm gonna take the tip of this needle and I'm gonna really trace it on the underbelly until I can get back there to keep that nice stitch on the needle. Now, as you might expect, we're gonna knock this stitch off of this needle. Boom. First purl stitch, baby. All right. Again, I'm not gonna pull it real tight right there. I'm gonna go right into my next stitch. So, holding on to it, come up under here, doop, and wrap it over top and back towards you. Holding it down, out the back side, and knock it off the left-hand needle. You can pull that a little tight, but don't get crazy. The third one, you can go wild. Needle comes through, yarn goes up and over and around back of that needle. Stitch comes out the back, and now you can have at, right? You can tighten it up. All right, and you're good, and that'll give you a nice, hopefully a nice pretty edge. So now you're purling. Hello. Hello. So go to it. Let's do, we'll do a couple rows of purling, and then we'll meet back at home base. Now we've purled a couple rows, right? And it looks exactly like when we knitted a couple rows. Now, like I said, the purl is a backwards knit, so that makes sense. If that were true, which it is, the fabric should look the same when it's all purls or all knits. So what we call this stitch is the garter stitch. And the garter stitch is just what you call, anytime you knit or purl all your stitches, that's the fabric that you get. Now, garter stitch is thick, it doesn't curl, it's nice and flat, and it's extremely stretchy. So those are all positive qualities for it. Does it have negative qualities too? No reason to harp on those. You know, we're trying to be a positive kind of program here, you know? So it's not as pretty aesthetically. It doesn't feel quite as nice to the touch, I think, as some other stitches, but the benefits are great. And
now we're on to probably my favorite part, at least of this lesson, and that's the stockinette stitch. Stockinette stitch is like the classic knit stitch. So at least for me, when I think of a sweater, the surface of just like a classic sweater, I think of the stockinette stitch. Actually, if you look close, any t-shirt material, any jersey knit, also stockinette stitch. It's done very easily. We learned how to purl and we learned how to knit. So now we're going to do alternating one knit row, one purl row, one knit row, one purl row. And that's the recipe to stockinette stitch, very simply put. So we finished last on a purl row. We're going to start our stockinette stitch on a knit row. Let's get started.
I'm going to knit a row, see what happens. Boom. All right, that's one row knit. And now, since we're alternating, we're on a purl row.
Okay, so you can see something materializing. That's cool. Instead of watching me do any other rows, I figured I'd just leave you to it for 4 to 6 rows, and then we can meet back here in 2 seconds flat, right?
All right, so check it out. That's our garter stitch. We know what that looks like. Kind of looks like oatmeal, or I don't know what you call those. It's just bumpy. And then what you have here is pretty. I think it's pretty. That's the stockinette stitch. And the stockinette stitch has 2 sides. We use 2 stitches to make it, the knit and the purl, and it has 2 sides. The pretty side is called the knit side. And it's called that because when we get to that side and we're working it, we knit across on that side. So my yarn's here, I'm knitting across. This is the knit side of a stockinette stitch on the back. And this is a little alarming. It looks very much like the garter stitch, the back. It's different once you get a little more accustomed to it, but if we're making a piece that has no garter on it, then we know that that's the purl side. That's pretty basic, right? So if our working yarn is over here, we know it's time to purl on the back side of our stockinette stitch. See, they are different. The garter stitch is always a lot thicker than the knit stitch too. So you can see just based on that. And that's it. That is knitting, my friends.
All right, so thank you. Congratulations, guys. Thanks for checking this out. I'm really enjoying doing it. I hope you're getting a lot out of it. One more thing I will say about the stockinette stitch. If you continue to do it, it curls in on the sides. So it is a terrible stitch for a scarf. But I think that you should do everything I tell you not to, in a sense, so you own your craft and you kind of understand why. It's certainly not a terrible idea to listen to me, but you know, it's probably best if you don't. So yeah, stockinette stitch curls. You might like a curled scarf. I'd have to judge you, but I don't know. Enough of this. Next class, we'll probably do some ribbing. Good for a scarf. We'll do a couple different kinds of ribbing. I'll show you how to bind off. And yeah, man, have a good night. Stay safe, everyone. I'll continue doing these. I have time on my hands. All right. God bless. Like it, subscribe it, and share it. Share it, please. Share it.